Welcome to Radio US. After taking the oath of office on January 20th, 2025, President Donald Trump wasted no time in launching a series of swift, bold actions aimed at fulfilling his campaign promises. The first few days of the Trump administration were marked by an intensity that immediately signaled the president's intention to reshape America's political landscape. With an array of executive orders, key appointments, and strong statements, President Trump aimed to move his agenda forward quickly, in a manner that echoed his previous term's aggressive stance on national issues. Upon entering the White House, the Trump administration began its work with speed. Trump signed numerous executive orders aimed at tackling key issues such as immigration, economic growth, and government efficiency. Within hours of his inauguration, Trump issued several executive orders that immediately set the tone for his presidency. His actions were swift and decisive, meant to demonstrate that things were changing and that the American people would see action on the promises he made during his 2024 campaign. The Trump administration's first moves were significant. One of the key orders was the reinstatement and expansion of the controversial travel ban, restricting entry from several predominantly Muslim countries. This action was met with both support from his base, who viewed it as a necessary security measure, and criticism from those who believed it discriminated against specific religious and ethnic groups. Nevertheless, the Trump administration pushed forward, asserting that its priority was safeguarding American citizens from potential terrorist threats. The Trump administration also began to fulfill its promise of addressing illegal immigration. The southern border wall, which had been a key element of Trump's earlier campaign, was revisited, with additional funding allocated for construction. This move was framed as part of a broader strategy to curb illegal immigration and restore what the Trump administration considered to be the rule of law at the border. These measures, although contentious, demonstrated the administration's commitment to putting America's interests first. In the midst of this fast-paced environment, the Trump administration organized a series of Trump news conferences that served as a platform for the president to address the public and the media directly. The Trump news conferences quickly became a hallmark of the administration, providing insights into the president's decision-making process and his rationale behind the key actions being taken. These briefings were often unscripted and combative, with President Trump frequently engaging in heated exchanges with reporters who challenged his policies. During one of his early Trump news conferences, President Trump reaffirmed his stance on immigration, reaffirming that building a border wall and addressing illegal immigration were among his top priorities. He also used the news conference as an opportunity to justify his rollback of several environmental regulations, which the Trump administration argued were overly restrictive and detrimental to American businesses. The Trump news conference was both a communication tool and a means for Trump to solidify his base, presenting a clear narrative that his administration was delivering on its promises. However, the Trump news conferences were not without controversy. His blunt responses and dismissive tone toward critics led to widespread criticism. Many saw the press briefings as an attempt to dominate the media narrative, rather than engage in meaningful dialogue with the American public. Despite the backlash, the Trump administration continued to use these briefings as a way to push forward its policies and provide a direct line of communication between the president and the American people. The Trump administration's second term was also marked by a concerted effort to strengthen the economy and create jobs. One of the key goals of the Trump administration was to reduce government regulations and allow businesses to thrive. In line with this goal, President Trump moved to undo several of the economic policies that had been put in place during the Biden administration. He began by lifting regulations on the energy sector, reversing environmental restrictions that had been put in place to address climate change. These actions were seen by the Trump administration as a necessary step to stimulate the economy, particularly in industries like coal and oil. The Trump administration also took steps to tackle trade imbalances with foreign nations. The president's America First economic policy remained a cornerstone of his second term, and he began renegotiating trade deals with China, Mexico, and other major partners. By seeking more favorable trade terms for the United States, the Trump administration aimed to create a stronger domestic economy that would benefit American workers and businesses. While the administration's policies on trade and economic regulation were celebrated by many of Trump's supporters, they were criticized by others. Critics argued that the aggressive trade tactics and deregulation could lead to greater environmental harm and exacerbate income inequality. Despite these criticisms, the Trump administration pushed forward with its agenda, confident in its approach to revitalize the U.S. economy. Another key moment in the first days of the Trump administration's second term came with the announcement of pardons and commutations for a number of individuals involved in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Approximately 1,500 individuals who had participated in the violent attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election had their sentences commuted or pardoned by President Trump. This controversial decision sparked outrage among many who felt that it undermined the gravity of the attack on American democracy. The Trump administration defended the move, arguing that it was a form of restorative justice and a way to grant clemency to those who had been involved in the riot. Critics, however, saw it as an endorsement of violence and an effort to further divide the country. The pardons were a clear demonstration of Trump's ongoing loyalty to his supporters, even in the face of widespread condemnation. The first week of the Trump administration's second term was not just focused on policy decisions in Washington. President Trump also took action to address national disasters. In the wake of devastating hurricanes in North Carolina and catastrophic wildfires in California, Trump flew to these disaster zones to assess the damage firsthand. His visits were seen as a way to demonstrate his leadership in times of crisis, even as the Trump administration continued to push forward its broader policy goals. During his visit to North Carolina, President Trump announced plans to reform or even eliminate the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, which had been criticized for its handling of previous disaster responses. Trump's administration argued that FEMA was inefficient and that its functions could be better managed by other agencies or private sector entities. This proposal sparked debates about the role of federal agencies in disaster relief and whether the Trump administration's approach would actually improve the effectiveness of response efforts. The early days of the Trump administration's second term were marked by a series of bold and controversial actions, from executive orders that addressed immigration and trade to the pardoning of those involved in the January 6th attack. President Trump moved quickly to reshape the direction of the country. His use of the Trump News Conference as a platform to directly engage with the public and defend his policies only intensified the national conversation about his leadership style. For better or worse, the Trump administration's early decisions set the stage for the remainder of his second term. The fast pace of his presidency was indicative of his desire to fulfill campaign promises and push through policies that aligned with his vision for America. Whether these actions will ultimately be seen as successful or divisive remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. The Trump administration is committed to moving quickly, decisively, and unapologetically. Thank you for tuning in to Radio US. We appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting updates and content. Stay connected and stay informed.